I'm not one for fairy tales or serendipity. My life's pretty much been about balance sheets, tax codes, and making sure numbers line up just right. Name's Emma, by the way. I've been an accountant for the better part of my adult life, recently turned auditor after a brutal few years hitting the books. That's the thing about me, when I set my sights on something, I get it done. No fluff, no fuss. This story kicks off on an unremarkable Tuesday. I was out hunting for a calculator, not just any calculator, mind you, but one of those fancy ones that can practically do your taxes for you. I found myself at this electronics sale downtown, thinking I'd swoop in and out. That's when the universe decided to throw me a curveball in the form of Alex. Alex was also in the market for a calculator, which I found out when we both reached for the last high-end model on the shelf. Our hands brushed, and I looked up into the most annoyingly charming face I'd ever seen. He had this cheeky grin like he'd won some sort of prize. "Looks like we've got ourselves a standoff," he said, his voice smooth but edged with amusement. I raised an eyebrow, not in the mood for games. I saw it first. I shot back, trying not to show any interest in the banter. But deep down, I was mildly entertained. "Oh, come on. Let's not start World War III over a calculator. How about we grab a coffee and talk it over?" he suggested, that grin still plastered on his face. The cafe was a little joint a few blocks away, quiet enough for us to chat. Turns out, Alex wasn't just some guy with a weird thing for calculators. He worked as a production director at his family's company, something to do with manufacturing that was miles away from my world of numbers. "So, you're like, what, a big shot at your company?" I asked, sipping my coffee, trying not to sound too impressed. He laughed, shaking his head. "Hardly. I just try to keep things running smoothly. It's my dad's business, really. I'm just the guy making sure we don't screw it up." The conversation flowed easier than I expected. Alex had a way of making you feel like you were the only two people in the room. He was curious about my work as an accountant, which no one outside of my profession had ever been before. "So you catch people trying to sneak a fast one with their finances?" he asked, intrigued. "Something like that. I make sure everything adds up. And when it doesn't, that's when I really get to work," I explained, warming up to the subject. "It's like being a detective, but for numbers." "Sounds intense. I can barely balance my checkbook without breaking a sweat," he admitted with a chuckle. We talked about everything and nothing, from our worst coffee experiences to the state of the economy. Before we knew it, hours had passed. Alex was easy to talk to, and for the first time in a long while, I felt genuinely relaxed. As the cafe started to hint at closing time, Alex finally broached the subject of the calculator again. "So, about our little standoff earlier," he began, trailing off, with a smirk. I laughed, realizing I'd almost forgotten about it. "Keep it. I've got a spare at home anyway," I conceded, feeling unexpectedly generous. "Only if you let me take you out for dinner. Consider it a thank you for the calculator, and for the company today," he countered, his tone hopeful. I hesitated, not used to making spur-of-the-moment decisions like this. But something about Alex made me want to throw caution to the wind, just this once. "Deal. But if you're late, I'm taking the calculator back," I joked, fully aware I was stepping into uncharted territory. Life after meeting Alex took a turn for the unexpected. Our coffee dates turned into dinner dates, and before I knew it, I was deeply entangled in a world far removed from my spreadsheets and financial reports. It wasn't just about numbers anymore, it was about us, building something together. One evening, Alex and I were lounging on my couch, a mess of Chinese takeout containers between us. We'd been seeing each other for a solid few months by then, and everything felt right. Comfortable, even. "So, Emma," Alex began, his tone a bit more serious than the casual banter we'd been sharing. "I've been thinking." I eyed him suspiciously, a half-eaten spring roll, paused, mid-air. "Thinking can be dangerous. What's up?" He chuckled, reaching for my hand. Dangerous, huh? Well, I was thinking about us. About how good this feels. I don't want to scare you off, but I really see this going somewhere. I set the spring roll down, my appetite suddenly replaced by a swarm of butterflies in my stomach. I feel the same, Alex. It's been easy. You know, in a good way. Exactly. He was animated now, his eyes lighting up. So, I was wondering, what do you think about us moving in together? The question caught me off guard. Moving in together was a big step, a leap into a future I hadn't allowed myself to fully imagine yet. But looking into Alex's hopeful eyes, I couldn't find a single reason to say no. I think I'd like that, I replied, my voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside me. Alex's grin could have lit up the room. Yeah? Yeah, I confirmed, my own smile mirroring his. Meeting Alex's family was the next natural step. His father, a self-made man with a firm handshake and a gaze that could either warm you up or freeze you out, welcomed me with surprising warmth. Emma, Alex hasn't stopped talking about you. Glad to finally meet the woman who's stolen his heart. His words were straightforward, no fluff, kinda like me. But it was Sarah, Alex's sister, who was a tougher nut to crack. As head of the purchasing department in their company, she eyed me like I was a column of numbers that didn't add up. So, an auditor, huh? Bet you're good at spotting any funny business. Her tone was loaded, like she was testing me. I do my best, I replied, keeping it cool, but friendly. I wasn't there to audit them, after all, just trying to make nice with the family. The wedding was nothing extravagant, just close friends and family. Alex and I weren't about the flash, we preferred something that felt more us. It was perfect, a testament to what we had together, solid and real without the need for show. 6 months into our marriage, I found out I was pregnant. Telling Alex was a moment I'll never forget. His face lit up like a kid on Christmas morning, and he scooped me up in his arms, spinning me around. We're going to be parents, Em. Can you believe it? We were over the moon, but sharing it with his family? We decided to break the news over dinner at his dad's place, the same house where I first met the old man and Sarah, who always looked at me like I was a puzzle she couldn't quite solve. The table was set like we were royalty, and his dad, Mr. Thompson, was in high spirits, probably because he thought this was just another casual family dinner. Little did he know. So, Emma, Alex tells me you're settling in just fine at the new place. That true? Mr. Thompson asked, passing me the potatoes. Yeah, it's been great. Feels like home already, I replied, trying to sound as relaxed as possible, despite the butterflies doing somersaults in my stomach. Sarah was poking at her food, silent up until now. Must be nice, playing house. Hope you're not distracting my brother too much from work, she said, her tone sharp like she was aiming darts my way. Alex jumped in, before I could reply. Sarah, cut it out. Emma's been nothing but supportive. Plus, we've got some good news to share. He looked at me, nodding for me to go ahead. I took a deep breath. Well, the thing is, we're expecting a baby. You could have heard a pin drop. Mr. Thompson's fork paused midair, and even Sarah stopped her dart-throwing act to stare. A baby? Mr. Thompson finally broke the silence, his voice a mix of surprise and something else I couldn't quite place. Well, I'll be. Congratulations. This is wonderful news. He got up to hug us both, a wide grin spreading across his face. Sarah's reaction was cooler, forced even. Yeah, congrats. A baby, huh? That's big news. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes, and I could tell this wasn't what she expected to hear. Mr. Thompson, oblivious to the tension, was already making grand plans. We'll need to celebrate properly. And think about the future too. A grandchild. This calls for a toast. He was already fetching his best bottle, the mood significantly lifted. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur of congratulations and plans for the future. Mr. Thompson was already joking about how the baby would take over the company one day, a comment that made Sarah's smile falter even more. Planning the baby shower wasn't even on my radar until Sarah brought it up out of the blue. We were at a family dinner, one of those where Mr. Thompson tries to make sure we all still liked each other. Sarah had been quieter than usual, which, if you knew Sarah, meant she was plotting something. Out of nowhere, she's like, "So, Emma, when's the baby shower? We should throw you one." Alex choked on his drink, and I swear, even Mr. Thompson looked like he'd seen a ghost for a second. Me? I was caught off guard. Hadn't really thought about it, I admitted, shooting a puzzled look at Alex, who shrugged. "Well, it's settled then. I'll organize it. It'll be at our place," Sarah announced, as if her deciding made it official. Alex tried to protest. "Sarah, you don't have to." But she cut him off. "Nonsense. It's what families do. Right, Dad?" Mr. Thompson, bless him, just nodded, probably too surprised or scared to disagree. So, it was settled. Sarah was throwing the baby shower, and I had this nagging feeling in my gut that her sudden generosity wasn't without strings. The day of the baby shower arrived, and honestly, it was more than I expected. The decorations were tasteful, the food was great, and Sarah played the part of the gracious hostess a little too well. Relatives I hadn't met yet were cooing over baby clothes and sharing unsolicited advice. It was all going surprisingly smooth, which should have been my first clue that something was up. Towards the end, just as people were starting to leave, Sarah made a show of clinking her glass to get everyone's attention. "Before we all go, I just want to say something," she started, her voice dripping with a sweetness that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Recently, we've had some things go missing in the house. Just small stuff, but still. I hate to ask, but could everyone just check their belongings? Just to be sure." The room went quiet. It was like one of those moments in a movie where you know something bad's about to happen. People started awkwardly rummaging through their bags and pockets, and I felt this sinking feeling in my stomach. "And Emma," Sarah turned to me, a smile plastered on her face. "I couldn't help but notice you putting something in your purse earlier. Mind showing us what it was?" My heart was racing. "Sure, Sarah. I've got nothing to hide," I said, my voice steady despite the panic setting in. I opened my purse and turned it upside down, letting its contents spill out on the table. Among the usual mess, a pair of diamond earrings clattered onto the surface. I froze. Those weren't mine. Sarah's smile widened. "Looks like we found our thief. We need to call the police." The room erupted into whispers, and I could feel every eye on me. I was mortified. "Those aren't mine. I swear," I managed to say, but my voice was barely above a whisper. Alex was by my side in an instant. "Enough, Sarah. We'll handle this ourselves," he said, his voice cold. The party broke up quickly after that. Accusations and confused goodbyes filled the air as people left. I was in a daze, the evening a blur of embarrassment and confusion. Once everyone was gone, I confronted Sarah. "Why would you do that? You know those aren't mine." Her response was a shrug. "Prove it." The ride home from the baby shower was like sitting on a ticking bomb. Alex was tight-lipped, hands clenched around the steering wheel, while I stared out the window, my mind racing. The silence between us was suffocating, but I was scared to break it, scared of what might come out. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. "Alex, you believe me, right? Those earrings. I've never seen them before tonight." He glanced at me, his jaw working like he was chewing on the words, before spitting them out. "Of course, I believe you. It's just. Sarah wouldn't do something like this without a reason. It doesn't make sense." The next morning was awkward. Alex was trying, I could tell. He made breakfast, something he never did, and kept shooting me these little looks like he was checking if I was still there with him. I talked to my dad. "He wants us to come over, talk about what happened," Alex said, breaking the silence over eggs and toast. I put my fork down, appetite gone. "And what? Defend myself? Prove I'm not a thief?" "It's not like that, Em. He's just concerned. We all are," Alex tried to explain, but his words felt like band-aids on a bullet wound. At Mr. Thompson's house, the air was charged. Sarah wasn't there, probably for the best, because I wasn't sure I could handle seeing her without lunging across the room. Mr. Thompson looked like he was carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders, a look I hadn't seen before. "Emma, Alex tells me there's been a misunderstanding," he started, his voice heavy. "A misunderstanding?" I repeated, incredulous. "Your daughter accused me of stealing, in front of everyone. How is that a misunderstanding?" Mr. Thompson sighed, a deep, weary sound. "Sarah has her reasons for doing things. Sometimes, they're not clear to the rest of us. So, her reasons justify publicly humiliating me?" I couldn't keep the bitterness out of my voice. "It's not like that. We just need to get to the bottom of this," Alex interjected, but I was beyond listening. The days following the disaster of a baby shower were tense. Alex and I were tiptoeing around each other, and around the issue with Sarah, like it was a sleeping dragon. Neither of us wanted to poke it, but we both knew it was there, breathing fire on everything. It was late one evening, the kind where the silence feels too loud, that Alex finally broke. He came into the living room where I was pretending to read a book, my mind miles away. That's when the unexpected happened. Alex's phone rang, and the look on his face when he saw the caller ID was enough to freeze my blood. It was his dad. "Hey, Dad. What? Now?" Alex's voice was tense, his brows furrowed. After a moment, he nodded, though I knew his dad couldn't see. "Okay, we'll be there." He hung up, looking at me with eyes that suddenly seemed older. That was my dad. He wants us to come over. Says it's urgent, about the company. The ride over was quiet, the kind of quiet that screams. When we got there, Mr. Thompson was waiting, looking like he'd aged 10 years in the last week. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Thank you for coming. We have a situation," he began, voice grave. "What kind of situation?" Alex asked, straight to the point. "It's the company. We're in trouble. Financial trouble," Mr. Thompson admitted, his usual strength wavering. My heart sank. What happened? I couldn't help but ask, the auditor in me needing to know. Mr. Thompson sighed, a long, tired sound. "It's a lot of things. Bad deals, lost contracts. But there's more. I found discrepancies in the accounts. A lot of money's gone missing." Alex looked like he'd been punched. How did this happen?" "That's the thing. It seems like it was on purpose. Someone's been sabotaging the company from the inside." I felt cold, a dread settling in. "Do you know who?" The question hung in the air, heavy. Mr. Thompson met my eyes, then Alex's. "I have my suspicions. It's why I needed to talk to you both. It's Sarah." The name dropped like a stone, sinking everything with it. Alex went pale. "Sarah? But why? How can you be sure?" "I'm not completely. That's why I need your help, Emma. You're an auditor. You see things others don't. I need you to look into the company's accounts, discreetly." It was a lot to process. My mind was racing, thoughts tumbling over each other. "I'll do it. I'll help you get to the bottom of this." The first step was getting access to all the financial documents, which Mr. Thompson provided without hesitation. "Everything's in the company's server. I've given you full access," he had said, looking older and more tired than I remembered. "Find whatever you can, Emma. We're counting on you." Armed with my laptop and a pot of coffee that seemed to perpetually refill itself, I set up shop in our home office. Alex, bless him, tried to help where he could, but numbers were never his strong suit. "I feel like I'm looking at hieroglyphics," he admitted one evening, squinting at the screen over my shoulder. "It's not so different, actually. Each number tells a story," I said, half joking. "You just need to know the language." The deeper I dug, the uglier the picture became. There were transactions that made no sense, contracts signed with companies that seemed to exist only on paper, and payments for goods that were either never delivered or grossly overpriced. "Look at this," I pointed out to Alex, showing him an invoice for materials that was 3 times the market rate. "This is textbook kickback territory." He looked at the figures, his brow furrowing. "But why? Why would Sarah do this? It doesn't make any sense." Anger and frustration were simmering beneath the surface of his voice. I knew he was struggling to reconcile the sister he thought he knew with the evidence we were uncovering. One evening, after a particularly long session of cross-referencing invoices with delivery notes, Alex let out a deep sigh. "We're going to have to confront her, aren't we?" I closed my laptop, the weight of his words settling between us. "Yeah, but not yet. We need irrefutable proof first. We can't accuse her based on suspicion alone." It was late one night when I finally closed my laptop, the last piece of the puzzle slotting into place. We had it. Proof that Sarah had been embezzling from the company, signing off on deals that benefited her personally at the expense of the company's health. We were gathered in the boardroom, a room that had seen better days, with the weight of the company's future hanging in the balance. The air was thick, charged with anticipation and dread as Mr. Thompson, Alex, Sarah, and I, along with the rest of the board, sat around that imposing oak table. "As you're all aware, we've been facing significant financial discrepancies within the company," I started, my voice steady despite the fluttering in my stomach. "My investigation has uncovered the source of these issues." All eyes were on me, including Sarah's, which flickered with something I couldn't quite place. Fear, maybe, or defiance. I found that contracts for equipment and materials have been signed with companies that exist only on paper. These contracts were grossly overpriced, and the equipment and materials supplied were either faulty or of subpar quality. I continued, laying out the evidence for everyone to see. The room was silent, the gravity of my words sinking in. I glanced at Alex, who gave me a small nod of encouragement. Furthermore, these transactions were arranged through figureheads, and it appears that personal remuneration was received for facilitating these deals. The total damage to the company amounts to more than $3 million, not to mention the severe impact on our reputation and the quality of our products. Gasps filled the room, and I saw Mr. Thompson's face harden with each word I spoke. "And who?" Mr. Thompson's voice cut through the tension. "Was responsible for these transactions?" All eyes shifted to Sarah as I said. "The evidence points to our head of procurement, Sarah Thompson." The color drained from Sarah's face as the realization of her exposure hit her. Mr. Thompson looked as if he'd been slapped, the betrayal by his own daughter a blow he hadn't seen coming. "Sarah, how could you?" Mr. Thompson's voice was a mix of anger and heartbreak. "You've not only betrayed this company, but your own family." Sarah shot up from her seat, her voice shaky, but defiant. "I did what I had to. I deserved recognition, a chance to prove myself, but all you ever cared about was Alex and now her." She spat, pointing at me. Mr. Thompson was on his feet now, his usual composure shattered. "You've done irreparable harm. I am disowning you and disinheriting you. You will face the full extent of the law for what you've done." The room erupted into chaos, with board members whispering among themselves, shock written all over their faces. The sound of police entering the room to detain Sarah was almost surreal, a stark reminder that the consequences of her actions were very real. After the storm had passed, and Sarah had been taken away, Mr. Thompson turned to me, his eyes softening. "Emma, you have done this company, and this family, a great service. You've shown a strength and integrity that is rare. Thank you." After all the dust settled and Sarah faced the music, getting slapped with an 8-year sentence, things started to shift for us. Not only did she have to cough up a chunk of change to the company for all the mess she caused, but she also had to pay me directly. Yeah, for that stunt she pulled with the earrings, trying to paint me as a thief. In the midst of all this chaos, life threw us a beautiful curveball. I gave birth to our little bundle of joy, a healthy baby who brought so much light into our lives. It was like, amidst the storm, we found our sunshine. And let me tell you, this kid has a special bond with their granddad. Whenever we visit Mr. Thompson, it's heart-melting to see them together. The old man's face lights up in a way I've never seen before. It's pure love, no two ways about it. Amidst adjusting to new motherhood and all, I took a giant leap, started my own auditing firm. Yeah, took all that mess and turned it into a mission. Now, I'm out here helping folks straighten out their books, catching mistakes, and stopping fraud before it can even start. It's tough work, but someone's gotta do it. Plus, having gone through what we did with the family company, I've got a personal score to settle with any sort of financial foul play.